All right, if everyone could come on in and take a seat, we can get started. Thank you all for being here tonight. Must not be a sports night. There's people here. It's great. Well, Happy New Year, everyone. Thanks for coming out on a cold evening to join us tonight. My name is Michelle Dexter. I'm the president of the Almaden Valley Community Association. I want to first thank everyone who responded to our end of year request for donations. We did receive about half of what we were looking for, which is wonderful. So thank you for your generosity. If you happen to enjoy tonight's meeting, we would be honored if you would consider donating as you're on your way out. Help us cover our expenses. So we have a really full program tonight. We have Councilmember Casey. We have our local police and sheriff office representatives here tonight. And we have a local attorney, James McManis, coming. So as a reminder, when we get to the Q&A portion of each of those hours, it's really important that everyone use the microphone. It seems to matter how loud your voice might be. It does not carry in this room at all, so people can't hear the question. Plus, we are still hybrid, and we have a number of people on Zoom, and they need to hear the questions too. So if you could raise your hand and hold your question until we get the microphone to you, that would be awesome. In addition, we are, if you're new here, we use a numbering system. So when it comes to the Q&A time, if you'll raise your hand, we'll give you a number. That way we can make sure we get the microphone around quick enough to everyone. And if you could help us out by really asking one question and getting to it quickly so that we can get all the questions in, that would be fantastic. So thank you very much for your cooperation with that. Please save the date for February 9th, our next meeting. We will be hosting a discussion on the pros and cons of electrification. That seems to be imminent, so we'll want to explore that a bit. And I'm going to lead and Vice President Gary Hector.
Thank you, Michelle. Hi, everybody. Thank you for taking the time out of your evening to come and join us. Tonight's program is a bit more ambitious than some that we've had in that we have multiple speakers. We tried to stick to the same topic, which is justice and law enforcement. I asked George Casey to come and talk a little bit about one of the big challenges for the law enforcement in the area, which is all the sporting events that are coming. So George, I'm going to turn it over to you. Come up, give us an update.
Thank you, AVCA, for putting on another wonderful event. I'll be brief. Unfortunately, a good number of what's going to happen, or the events that are going to happen, are going to be up in San Francisco. We do have a big event on the Monday, the week of the Super Bowl. I can't tell you all the different events that'll be involved, but if you go to sj26.sanjose.org, I'm sure the AVCA will get this information out there, or the website out to you. You'll be able to see all the events that are going on. We're planned out well. Captain Payne will discuss what strategy we have in place, but we're well prepared. Unfortunately, we don't have as many of the events as we'd like to have here in San Jose. As I mentioned, San Francisco once again kind of stole our thunder. I was also asked to discuss what we have planned for 4th of July, and I'm disappointed to say at the moment the city doesn't have anything yet. We're working with the Cultural Affairs Office. This is the 250th anniversary. This is a great milestone, so we should be celebrating our country. So that's still in the works, so nothing to report there. Having said all that, open to any questions you guys may have on those topics or anything in general. Yes, sir. Microphone. Yeah, so that's actually a federal. Yeah, I don't have any input on that. We were told, the question was, there any updates on the zoning for the post office on Crown that burned down? I was told the last time this came up about a month ago that we were about a year out before anything was actually substantively going to happen. So I don't have any more updates other than that. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Any resumption of the fireworks at Almaden Lake?
No. Yeah.
Hi, George. Can you give me that website again?
SJ26.sanjose.org. Yes, sir.
Thanks for coming tonight, Councilman.
My pleasure.
I got a question for you about our budget. I understand that what I read in the media that there's a budget deficit. It's substantial, and you're on the committee. So
Yeah.
how are we doing?
Well, it's going to depend on what the numbers look like as far as the sales tax numbers coming over this Christmas holiday to determine just how bad it is. At the moment, I think it's roughly $20 million deficit. It wasn't meant to be that bad based on a prognostication from a while ago when we did the last budget. But that's where we are at the moment. There's going to be a lot of belt tightening for all the departments. For example, the police department, unfortunately, they're being asked to cut $11 million out of their budget, which is dramatic, particularly given where they are with staffing and whatnot. So every department is going to have to tighten the purse strings a bit, but we're hopeful that the sales numbers come in a lot better than what we anticipated, and that's going to determine what extent we're going to have to start making some cuts. Pleasure. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for being here. I just had a quick question. Is there any news on the mayor's political ambitions statewide?
So I'll direct you to Politico had an article that came out this morning that mentioned the mayor is actually considering exploring the opportunity to run. Whereas in the past, he wasn't. I think this is not to speak for him. I haven't had this conversation with him, but I would imagine he's looked at the field. And I think he has, obviously, as we all do, a vested interest in our state doing well. And I think almost at some point he's going to be compelled because he's the best candidate at the moment, in my estimation. I'm a big fan of our mayor. And based on the folks that I've seen that have thrown their hats in the ring, I can't imagine any of them doing a better job than him. I would be excited and be very supportive of him running for governor. So I think he's getting closer to, I think, making a decision. I don't think he's quite there yet, but he's open to the possibility at this point, which is a revelation, a new revelation that came out today. That's a great question. So we've had similar scenarios. The question was, who's the mayor after? Because I like your optimism, because you think if he decides to run, he's going to win, right? So we should be prepared for. I suspect it'll be what happened with the council members that have taken on different positions. There will be an election, and no one will be in that seat in the interim, and then we'll have an open election, and the election will decide. Yeah.
Does that mean we have an election like Sunnyvale, how Los Gatos has one of the council members will run as a mayor, or do we have an election like an election?
No, I believe it'll be an open election.
Open election.
I don't know who will occupy the position in the interim. I suspect the city manager may just fill the role, or the vice mayor. Actually, maybe the vice mayor. If I had to guess, the vice mayor. I haven't looked at our charter. I would suspect the vice mayor would fill the role until an election is had. But we've had an election and someone else fills the role.
But we do have an election in that case.
Yeah. Well, we will have an
Eventually.
election. Yeah. There definitely will be an election. The question is, in the interim, who will be in charge? And I suspect the vice mayor will fill the role.
Yeah.
Just like a vice president would in that situation. And then once the election is decided, whoever wins will take over. But we would have election. Yeah.
You mentioned that San Jose has a big deficit, and I was just wondering what your thoughts were on the proposed taxing of the assets of wealthy Californians and consequences of that.
Yeah, I'm not a proponent of, my default is no to any of the taxes. I was actually the only council member that voted against the Measure A county tax. And I think a tax on billionaires, I'm against it. It's short-sighted. Billionaires have options. All they're going to do is take their money and go elsewhere. And it logically for me, it doesn't make sense. But in general, I'm not a tax person. I don't support most tax at all. All right. Well, that was painless.
Sir. Thank you, George. In listening to you guys, you've expressed a lot of interest in public safety issues. So over the last year, we've had multiple different people come and talk about citywide safety issues. Tonight, we have representatives from the police department and from the sheriff's office who work in this area. I'm going to turn it over to Captain Steve Payne first. He is the commander of the Southern Division of the San Jose Police Department. And then we'll hear from Captain Jeffrey Puente and Watch Commander Tyler Fernandez, who I believe is a lieutenant, right? Okay.
There we go. Okay. If I have a bad habit of dropping the mic, and you won't be able to hear me. So just give me the motion. Like put it back up closer to your mouth. If I start to fade, gosh, where do I begin? Okay, I'm going to start off with saying, Gary, thanks for the invite. It's been like 10 months, and this is the first invite that I've had. I know it came out 6 months ago to the Almaden Valley. Gary gave me some talking points when he asked me to come and speak today. And I think one of them was going to be resources for San Jose PD in the Southern Division, how they're deployed. I'll go over that. I'm going to spend a good amount of time on staffing, and then I'm going to go to some crime data and then how we deploy resources. And I'm going to go through a couple of case studies that have come out of Almaden Valley probably in the last 30 days that kind of reflect the process and how I deploy the resources. And it's a two-pronged approach. I follow data and I follow your guys' input. So I have like 30 minutes of information in this PowerPoint and these slides, and I got like 20 minutes to get through it. So thank goodness the council member went before me, because every time he sees me go before him, he's like, I'm not making it home for dinner. So without further delay, go to the next slide. Next. All right. I thought the screen was going to be bigger. I'm sorry. I might have to jump up there and point some things out. So I started doing this a few months ago. This data was pulled from Google. I didn't call up City Hall and these other cities or the other agencies and ask them, hey, what's your staffing like, or what's your population? But I do this just to kind of set the tone for expectations and perspective for what other cities and their departments are looking like staffing wise. So if you guys can maybe take a little mental note of what you see up there for a few more seconds. Next slide, please. And we'll get to San Jose PD. So we have about 1 million people, and we have 1,055 cops. We're authorized for 1166. We're about 110 bodies short. What really matters for this room, patrol, the uniformed officers who respond to your non-emergency and emergency calls for service. 451 officers. I think as of last week, it's like 448. Like injuries and stuff like that. 16 districts in the city, 3 shifts, day shift, swing shift, and the midnight shift, 2 sides of the week. We're a 24/7 operation, but obviously the officers don't work 24/7, so we split it up. It equals out to about 4.7 officers per patrol team, 18.8 officers per division at any given time. Now, that's on a perfect day with no sick calls and no vacation, which never happens. So we struggle to probably put 4 officers in a patrol team every night. And if we don't get that, which I bet you we don't, maybe about 10 bodies short per night, we hold them over from the shift prior. So there's probably a 25% chance if you call for an officer for help, that officer's working on their second shift. So that's just for, a little bit of awareness and perspective for staffing. Next slide. What do we got? Okay, here's a map of the Southern Division. What I probably should have done was put that up in an entire city map so you can see how big our area is in Southern. It's the largest geographical area of any of the 4 divisions. Next slide. And there's District Adam. So this is your, gosh, I wish it was closer. So this is your guys' district. There are 5 beats within this district. Almaden Valley is kind of the crown jewel. You're right there in the center. I'm sure you guys all know where you're at. So there's our staffing, what it looks like, and the geographical location that we cover for those officers. Next slide. All right, I'm going to pivot towards some stats now. So this is perfect timing that we just closed out 2025. So I like the whole before and after, because one, if it's successful and I get to show reductions, I get to tout the success, right? If we were in the negatives, I probably would skip it. But I had my analyst drum up the top 10 crime types for the zip code Gary gave me, which I've never had been given a zip code before for the geographical location of or the boundaries of a neighborhood association, but we'll go with it. It's a very big area. So he gave me 95120. I had my analyst take the top 10 crime. I know there's 11 up there. She separated reportings of rapes from other sex offenses. Why you see 11, but 2024 and 2025, I had her put the totals up there so we could do some comparisons. So let's go through some comparisons. Aggravated assaults, 24 to 11, a 54% reduction. Arson, so aggravated assaults, that's going to be more like your felony assaults. Anywhere from a drive-by shooting to a domestic violence, the more serious offenses. Arsons went from 1 to 2, so up 100%. Little boo-boo there. Simple assaults. I mean, if you get into an argument with your neighbors and you get into a shoving match and you call the police, want to press charges, that's going to be under that category. So that went down about 25% from the year before. Burglaries, I like this one. I wish it was bigger, but I'll take the double-digit reduction from 80 to 68, so a 15% reduction. Larceny, I hate this category because it's so like general and it's so inclusive of a bunch of different theft types. It's anywhere from auto burglaries to porch package thefts to shoplifting. So that went up 21%, 141 to 171. Narcotics. Here's the thing with narcotics violations. Those are usually self-initiated activity. That's probably an officer making a car stop. They found some dope on the driver or passenger, made an arrest. So you could look at it one of two ways. We have less of a drug problem in the valley, or the officers just arrested 2 less people. So either way, it's down 50%. Reported rapes went from 10 to 1. That's a pretty significant drop. I'm going to get into the reporting of these sexual assaults pretty soon. Robbery, 5 and 5, we stayed the same. Sex offenses. So this is going to be anything other than the straight rape allegations. So like indecent exposure, child molestation, sexual battery, and it went from 13 to 20, 54% increase. This is a trend that we've been seeing. We've been seeing in these sexual assault related cases, the reporting has been much higher. I don't think anyone's taken a deep dive into seeing what the explanation is, but I talked to the sexual assault unit commander a few months ago and asked them what he thinks. He said that he's been noticing a pretty significant increase in delayed reporting. So delayed reporting is like, I mean, it's just what it sounds like. You're 25 years old, you know, something happened when you were younger and you feel now is the time that you feel that you want to report it. And that's been happening a lot. And I'll say this too is, and this is not to just discredit any of the cases that come in or the allegations. This is more to put in perspective that not every one of these cases happens in the city of San Jose. They don't all happen. Not all 20 of those cases happen in Almaden Valley. I've taken reports for a sexual assault that happened on a cruise ship in the Bahamas, and the victim just decided they wanted to report it when they came home. So a lot of those probably reflected in that number 20 up there. So just keep that in mind. Vandalism down 20%, vehicle theft down 38%. I love that number because that's one of the highest reported crimes in the city. And I'm really happy to see that reduced, especially in Almaden Valley where crime is fairly low anyways in Almaden Valley. So to see a significant drop like that, something like that, it's pretty encouraging. So what I should have done was have another zip code up there with their crime stats so we could do a little comparison to see how you fare out with the rest of the city. But I didn't think of that until earlier. So I asked my analyst to pull a couple of numbers. I'm going to read them off to you. So stolen vehicles in zip code 95127, which also has a significant amount of county pockets, 272 versus our 28. And burglaries in that zip code, 109 versus our 68. So you guys are looking pretty good. Okay, before we go to the next slide, oh, actually, on the east side. Jeez, come on. Okay, so the total for the top 10 reported crime types reported by Almaden Valley residents or the residents of that zip code for 2024, 2025, a 7% decrease. I'll be honest, I'll take the win, but I'm looking for double digits. So my goal for 2026 is to get double digits on this. And I can already tell what I'm looking at: burglaries and the larceny. I'm going to take a deeper dive, not larceny, because if we have a pocket in the zip code that maybe we're seeing some concentration of like vehicle thefts or package thefts, and I can pattern those and get good intelligence or information on when and where they're exactly happening, so I can strategically deploy resources in hopes to just reduce that number. That's what I'm going to do. So that's my goal for 2026, double digits. I'll tell you how I do that. What's the next slide? Go to the next slide. Next slide. Okay. So I told you the way I work on crime reduction, it's a two-pronged approach. I follow the data and I follow community input. So every third stats for the entire division. I look for hotspots, patterns, increases of certain crime types in certain areas. And if I can get a good indication of when they're happening, where they're happening, I can deploy resources in those areas during those times, those days of the week. The baseline deployment model looks something like this. Officers will be directed to go out in between calls for service and saturate the areas, because a blue and white car in those neighborhoods is kind of a signal to criminals. Okay, maybe I should move on to someplace else. There are cops in the area. Obviously, you saw in the first few slides, we're very limited in resources, so we have to be very judicious in how we deploy them. And that's how I do it. In addition to the input we get from community meetings, it doesn't have to be from a meeting. You can send me an email. It can come through the council office. It can come through the mayor's office. I've gotten input from all the above. A phone call from one of the neighborhood association leaders. I usually like to corroborate one with the other, but sometimes it's just, if I get enough people telling me, hey, there are speeders on this street, even though I don't have any data backing it up by accidents, I'll still send somebody out there and do some. I just need to know about it. So I'm going to go through a couple of examples in how community input really helped some of this stuff out. So I worked like 6 weeks straight leading up to Christmas. I was super burnt out. So I took a week off, which is the longest I've taken off since I've been a captain, for a New Year's week. I have to check my emails because otherwise my inbox will just explode by the time I'm back. So every couple of days, I'll just go through my inbox. And on New Year's Eve, somewhere around noon, I had an email from Charles. And he told me, hey, listen, we've had 4 burglaries in the last 8 days. That's kind of a spike for our neighborhood. He lives in the country club neighborhood. And he said, the last we saw this was 4th of July, 2023. And it was 4, I think it was. And I think it was attributed to people being out of town, which is probably a pretty fair assessment. Can you take a look at this? Yep, no problem. Our analyst, thank goodness, was working, or my analyst was working until 5 that night. I gave her a call from Southern California. Are you working? Yes, till 5. I need the burglaries for Adam 5, your guys' beat, mapped for the last 30 days. Apparently, there were 4 burglaries in the last 8 days. Okay, no problem. She texts me an hour later. Hey, I'm going to send you the map right now. But it wasn't in 8 days. They happened within 51 minutes of each other. I'm like, okay, so they were just reported within 8 days. Just like on the 4th of July week, people were likely on vacation, which is probably why their homes were targeted. And they reported this when they got home and found that their house had been burglarized. So thank you, Charles, for the info, because that kickstarted a few things. I took the map. You can go to the next slide. So I took the map she created. I called the 2 lieutenants, swing shift and midnight shift lieutenants, and I told them, hey, I'm going to send you a map, and this is what I want done. Look at the times in which these offenses occurred. It's a very narrow window on the same day. In between calls for service, I need officers on those streets just driving through and the surrounding areas for the next 14 days. Expand it beyond that time frame, because it's like 51 minutes. I'm sure just in the grand scheme of being a criminal, they probably thought maybe we'll stagger the times. So more boots on the ground, more officers in the neighborhoods to address the specific issue brought up by Charles, increased burglary in the neighborhood. On the other side of it, I called the burglary commander and I brought it to his attention. They get so many burglaries. You're talking like 4,000 or 5,000 burglaries a year with 2 detectives to work them. They hadn't even gotten to those reports yet. So I told him, I sent him the map, which was awesome for him because they don't typically do that unless it's like on a larger scale. Hey, I think they're probably related. It doesn't take Sherlock Holmes to figure out that the same person or the same group is responsible for these. Can you take a look at them? You know what? It's obviously part of a string. I will assign all 4 of these to the same investigator right now. Awesome, thanks. All started with an email from Charles. Maybe that would have happened before. I probably would have saw the hotspot when I checked the next 30 days worth of data, but just based upon that email, even though I was on vacation, it got addressed probably same. Well, sorry, I was a day late. It got addressed a day later. So next slide. Okay. I'm going to close it out with this. I'm both upset about this one and really happy about it. On 12/8, I had an email forwarded to me by the mayor's office, one of his deputy chiefs of staff. And it's pretty typical. And here's the thing is I don't take offense to something being sent to the mayor's office or the council office. I mean, the mayor's an Almaden Valley guy. If I had the mayor living in my neighborhood, I'd probably email him too if I had an issue. So she described a very well-worded email. She described a few incidents, 3 incidents in which her car had been vandalized in the parking lot at the Los Alamitos Creek Trail. She drives a Tesla. She had video footage of each one. She had still images of the suspect, clear images of his face. So good suspect information, right? She made, I think, an online report, and then she had an officer come out for the other ones. They took the reports, 3 separate incidents. She was expressing her frustration to the mayor's office because nobody had called her to follow up. And I don't blame her, but here's why. Is on your typical vandalism cases, because of staff, we don't have a unit that's assigned or dedicated just to investigate vandalisms. If we get a big high profile case or a series or something like this is probably something that should have gone. It'll go to the assaults unit because in addition to assaults, for which they get 4 or 5 1,000 cases a year, they'll take kind of some of the miscellaneous things if it's higher profile or just a big concern to somebody. That's not what happened here. Kind of the fail safe, in my opinion, probably should have been the 3rd officer to take a report when she said this is the 3rd time with the same individual. I'm not going to judge that officer too harshly. Maybe he was super busy and he couldn't do any substantial follow-up. I'm not sure, but that's going to get addressed. Believe me, that's going to get addressed with the lieutenants and the supervisors, so they know that the expectation is that you guys aren't just going to go out and take reports, but watch for patterns. And if you guys can take this from contact to completion, please take it there. So I called this kid. He doesn't even work in this area. He works in Southern, but he works down in more towards Santa Teresa, Burnell area. But he's a real go-getter. And I called him on his first of 3 days off. And I said, hey, I got this problem. It's low-hanging fruit. It's totally solvable. Can you take it off my hands? No problem. Send me the info. His first day off, I get a text message from his sergeant. Hey, do you want updates on this case? I'm very busy, Nick. Milestone updates. I don't need a play-by-play. The next text was a 10-paragraph text message. Okay, Jay Cox, the officer, he got the suspect identified. He made him at his residence, which is important, via surveillance for the search warrant. He identified a few other people who came to say that they've been same guy at the Creek Trail. The search warrant and the Ramey warrant are with the judge right now for signature. And this was in like 5 days of me getting this email. Okay, awesome. Sounds good. Flip to the next slide, please. So 8 days after receiving the email, they executed the search warrant and the arrest warrant for this guy who was harassing people who were going to that park, to the Creek Trail to jog and to walk. He was vandalizing people's cars, throwing rocks, taking a knife out and scratching them up. $11,000 in damage, I think it was, to this lady's vehicle, multiple cases. So when they hit the house on the search warrant, he had a handgun, 2 assault rifles, and a bunch of ammunition. He was a subject of a search or a restraining order. So he's prohibited from possessing firearms just based upon that. Those 2 assault rifles are not registered with DOJ. So that's another offense. So in addition to the felony vandalisms, he was arrested and charged with or booked for multiple firearms offenses. This is just a pure result of the community giving input and raising their hands when they think something isn't right, and bring it and eventually getting to my attention or just the department's attention. And here's the end result. I'm not going to say every suspicious vehicle that you email me about or call me about is going to result in this, but this one did. And here's the thing, if this guy is at that jogging trail parking lot and he's being the a-hole that he is there, just that was being reported, I can't imagine what he's going to do when he snaps and he has this at home. He should not have had this in his house. So I'm really glad we're able to take this off the street, but I'm even more grateful for the community member who raised her hand, said, I don't think this is right. Can someone please help me out? And it happened. I don't think it should have gotten to the level where she should have had to have complained about that. And like I said, that's going to get addressed. But I'll leave it with this. And the idea that, you know, when we all work together with that two-pronged approach, the community input, following the data, you know, awesome things like this, even in Almaden Valley, awesome cases like this can be made. I know I covered like 2 things with the probably 100 concerns that you guys have outside of this. So if we have time for Q&A right now, I'll take some questions. If not, okay. If not, then I'll wait till the end, but I guess we got 5 minutes. Take your best shot. Ma'am. Oh.
Hi, Captain Payne. First, thank you for what you do. And, you know, as we all know, it's a tough time to be in law enforcement these days. So what is SJPD doing to attract young people, kids to the profession? I was out at Silicon Valley Auto Show over the weekend. California Highway Patrol was there recruiting. So what is SJPD trying to do to show, you know, this is a career you should be considering and has a lot of value for the community?
So we have our own recruiting unit, and it's funny. I'm looking at the crowd, and one of my lieutenants just came out of the recruiting unit as the recruiting commander. So I knew I was going to get that question. I was hoping I could pick on him, but he's not here. He's probably listening on Zoom. Thanks, Mike. So we just started a satellite recruiting program, and we send officers who are not assigned to the recruiting unit, because we think we have like 4 or 5 people in the recruiting unit, to some recruitment training so they can come to events like this, regular community events. So if you guys have an event, you want a recruiter there, let me know, and we can get, if not the recruiting unit, just a satellite recruiter, and they can come and give our pitch. We used to go out of the area. I'll be honest, I'm kind of partial to recruiting from San Jose. I get it's like fishing, and eventually you're going to fish that whole dry, but I was born and raised in San Jose. I'm like 4th generation San Josean. So I think there's a lot to be said about being a cop in the community you grew up in, because you just know the people, you know the culture, you know the areas. But there's the military installation thing too. People have mixed feelings about that. I'm a veteran. I think there is value to that. We're super trainable. You know, we've been in adverse situations. I don't think just a few, but I'll be honest. I don't know what they're doing with that aspect of recruiting. I hope that they're gonna, take off with it a little bit more. We have a new deputy chief and a new captain who may become a little bit more from that background. And so I think they're going to probably expand upon those efforts in those arenas and those areas. But you are our best recruiters. I'll be honest. I mean, we're okay, but you are our best recruiters. If you know somebody, a family member, a neighbor, and it doesn't matter if they're of age, if they're in high school, get them interested, give us a call. We'll hook them up with a ride along. I mean, that's how I was hooked. Both my parents were cops. I remember going and riding with my dad at like 10 years old. There was nothing else I wanted to do. It was just that. It was because of that. So send them my way, and we'll do our best to get them interested. Next. Ma'am. Mike.
I know that when mail is stolen from your home, you have to report that to the post office. Does the police department get that information as well? Do you have a sense of how that's going?
So no, we don't get those reports. So we get the calls, but unless it's actively happening right there, they're told, and I just found this out a few months ago, to report it to the postal inspector. There's one postal inspector for like probably multiple counties. So you can imagine how inundated she is. That's been an issue. I've been getting that, and trust me, I have put officers in undercover cars to watch mailbox. I've done all kinds of stuff. It's just kind of a crapshoot, and there are multiple crews that work multiple areas. The biggest target right now seems to be those community mailboxes, because there are these keys that open them up. They're not, but I mean, again, there is a crime on the state side for mail theft. I'll be honest, I don't think the feds have an appetite for the federal charge. So I think they ended up going state anyways, I think when they actually get some of these cases, which is odd. But in any case, I guess to answer your question, we do what we can, but mail theft with somebody else's jurisdiction, I have my hands full with everything else I'm trying to do at the state level and local level. So we do work with the postal inspectors, but it's a very slow process. And I do assign officers to follow up on some of the stuff, and they do make some great arrests, but it's like a needle in a haystack. You know, we take one person out of commission and there's 10 more people to take their place. You know, it gets very frustrating. So I'm sorry I don't have a better answer for you, but that's kind of where it is. Postal inspectors do community meetings. So Gary, if you want to schedule one, I could put you in touch. All right. And I'll come with them so it doesn't look like I'm pawning it off. We'll do one more. I'm sorry.
I have a question about all of the e-bikes and the children who are riding these, and why are they not required to take a driving test and have a license on their bikes? Because they truly twerk them so they're not bikes. There's no pedals. They're just bars. They twerk them so they go faster. They're even on the walking trails up at Quicksilver, and they're going fast. And there's a lot of us older people walking those trails. So I know at these meetings, we've been told this is just an Almaden problem, but it's really not.
No, you're right. It is. And I think most of the meetings that I go to in like Almaden Valley-ish, maybe some of the South Willow Glen neighborhoods, that's an issue that comes up. I mean, I see it, you know, when I'm off duty. It's an increasing issue. You know, it's a complete pain in the butt. It's a total hazard. You know, on the trails and stuff, I'm not sure there's much we could do about that. On the streets, and you see them, they'll take over the streets. There'll be a group of like 4 or 5 kids, and they're doing wheelies and stuff, and they're taking the streets over. So here's the thing with something like that, they're categorized in like 3 different, per the vehicle code, there's like 3 different types. And I'll be honest, I'm reading the different classifications for these like type A, type B, type C e-bikes. I can't tell the difference. The speed maybe, but it's just, I don't know why they're just feeling the need to distinguish. Somebody was bored up in Sacramento, I guess. The most I can do is put out to the lieutenant, and I've done this. Hey, we're getting a lot of complaints about these e-bikes and the CVC violations. Tell the supervisors to have the officers, when they on view this, I want no holds barred enforcement. You know, it's 0 tolerance. I want some of these bikes taken away if they can. But it's just one of those things where they're going to have to on view, and I'm going to have to trust the officers to do my bidding. And they usually do, but usually do because I have a control in place to keep them accountable. Like the patrol checks, I GPS them. You know, I do the old junk car senior method where I'm gonna follow up on them and I'm gonna hold them accountable with all that stuff. But it's really hard to do that with e-bike enforcement. I just have to trust they're doing their job. I'm not going to put together some kind of a task force because we just don't have the staffing for it to go around and look for them. Even though I wish I had the staffing for that, because it kills me too every time I see it. I'd love to snatch those bikes away from them and put them on the front bumper of my car and take it to their house and tell their parents the $3,000 you spit on that. Now I'm going to book it as evidence. Sorry. But it's just one of those things where I don't want to say it's a low level problem, but we have other things that I try to focus some resources on. Mr. McManis, can you weigh in when you talk? I'm looking at it and I'm like, this guy's like the Messiah. I know he's going to have an answer for everything.
The question was whether or not we need a law. And the problem, I think, with legislation many times is that we can have lots of laws, but if they're not enforced, they don't mean anything. So well, that's true. So I suppose those kinds of requirements might be helpful.
Let them take the line, Steve. Thank
you. All right. I knew I was going to go over. Sorry about that. You're welcome, the SO. All right.
All right. So now from the county, we have Captain Jeffrey Puente and Lieutenant Tyler Fernandez, the watch commander, who could take off at a moment to go handle some crime.
Thank you very much. As Gary said, my name is Jeff Puente. I'm the captain of the Headquarters Patrol Division for the Sheriff's Office. This is Lieutenant Tyler Fernandez. He's one of my 4 watch commanders that I have assigned throughout the entire county. So Gary, thank you for inviting us. AVCA, thank you for having us here. Appreciate having the opportunity to meet with you guys and talk a little bit about what we do for your community group. I took over the Headquarters Patrol Command position about 2.5 weeks ago. So it's been a little while for me in this area, but most of my career was spent in what we call the Burbank district, which is from San Carlos up near Valley Medical, through the Almaden Valley, all the way up to Almaden, and then out through Bailey. So it's a pretty big area that I spent most of my career on patrol in. So I'm pretty familiar with it. You saw Captain Payne's maps of the geographic area of 95120. Every part that wasn't inside that blue line, that's ours, right? And some of the streets that are within that blue line are also ours. You talk about McKeon, you talk about San Vicente, go Fortini, down south to the Almaden Valley, New Almaden. There you go. La Foret restaurant, all those areas down there. That's our jurisdiction, as well as the parks. We have that area too. So in Headquarters Patrol, we have 68 deputies and sergeants assigned to it. In this area, the Burbank district area, at any time, it's either 2 to 3 deputies that are on duty to cover a very big area. So calls for service, it's very reactive. And if, as Captain Payne said, if the data tells us something's happening, or if I get complaints from the community, we do something similar. We'll focus on those areas, focus on those problems. I have the ability to get more people if I need them, but that's just the way our current staffing model is. So I don't have a lot of the statistics. I brought my lieutenant with me today to talk about some of our statistics in the area, because I'm still getting up to speed on the operations of the division, specifically in the Burbank area, down through the Almaden Valley. So again, my name is Jeff Puente. I'm new to the unit, but I've been on with the Sheriff's Office for almost 24 years. So Tyler?
Good evening. So I'm Lieutenant Tyler Fernandez. I'm your watch commander out of our Headquarters Patrol Division. So I oversee our Burbank district, which is where you guys all reside. I also oversee our East Side San Jose, our Transit Division, and our South County Division for all of our patrol units. I pulled some stats for you guys over the last month, from November 1st to December 30th. We had 96 calls for service. Out of those 96 calls for service in the unincorporated areas for our Burbank district, particularly in the Bravo 9 beat, which is going to be, Country View, McKean, Almaden Road, and Country View. We took 4 reports. Out of those 4 reports, there was a missing persons, a battery, 240, 242, a fraud, and then a probation violation. From the last 6 months, so from June 1st to the end of December, we took 14 reports out of that same jurisdiction. The types of calls for service that we're seeing the most are your missing persons, fraud, identity theft, and vandalism, particularly in this area. We don't have necessarily the violent crime stats that come out of the city limits within your guys' jurisdiction, kind of actually occurring in our unincorporated areas right now. Also in our parks areas, we just haven't really seen that. There's been some fights, more like Hellier Park and those kind of areas. But it is very interesting to hear about the motorized bikes on the trails. That is definitely something to either shoot us an email or a call or to the non-emergency line that this is happening, because we can get our parks units up there. They do go ride on mountain bikes, but flush the area. They should not be on the trails with those, because it is a safety risk. And that is all that we have for our area here. If you guys have any questions? So that's somebody either doing the into your mailbox, taking your information, taking your name and everything, and doing a fraudulent credit card, something like that is usually what they're doing. They're stealing your identity and they're getting financial gain from. Yes. Yep. If it's in our unincorporated area.
Hello. I'm not sure if this is the city or the county. It's at that Los Alamitos trail. About a year ago, there was another knife thing of a elderly gentleman. Has that case ever been closed?
And like burglaries, and we're seeing it on the fringe of the county that goes over into the city to make sure that if there's any trends to match up with our trends. We work very well together. Everybody from our agency, even on the outside to smaller departments, we're constantly trying to do trends that we're making sure that we're all working together and hammering that stuff out.
Captain or other, Captain Fuentes, I have a policy question for you.
I love policy questions.
Great. It's about
an obscure one.
It's a mental health question. We've all been touched by mental health with our post office being burnt down. And I've been working with the county, one of the county psychologists, and she tells me that if she writes out a involuntary psych hold on a person, this is a person who hasn't committed a crime, but maybe they're high on meth or they're just playing out of their mind, and she has to write this involuntary order. She says she can't get help putting him on the gurney to get him to a hospital. So I was wondering, what is the department's policy regarding assisting the county psychologist on these involuntary holds?
Yeah, an interesting question. Obviously we're here to protect people, right? Make sure things are safe. So if there's an issue with somebody not getting onto a gurney or going voluntarily, we're going to be there to help out as best we can, but we're also not going to kidnap people, if that makes sense. We want to make sure that we talk them into it. A lot of the stuff that we do will take a long time to communicate with the person to gain compliance. We don't just, then we're going to grab you and throw you in the car. That's not how that works. So that's a significant part of it. We just got the psychiatric emergency response team no longer exists in our area. The mobile crisis unit is the next unit up that we call to have respond to the scene and help us with those scenarios.
But what if the person won't get on the gurney and you got this involuntary hold order from the psychologist? What's the policy? Will you do it? Will you put them on the gurney?
Yeah, I mean, every situation's unique. So unless, I'm there and actually handling the call, I got to trust that my staff's going to use the training that they've received in order to gain compliance and get this person to go get the medical help that they need.
Captain Payne, can you have any comment on that?
Put somebody on a 5150 hold.
That's right.
Are you asking if we could use force to chain him to a gurney?
Well, the problem is the psychologist says she's written like half a dozen orders, no, more than a dozen orders. This person is like in a hotel room. They're out of their mind, right? But they won't, it's an involuntary order. They won't get on the gurney to go to the hospital. And she says the police won't help, and neither will the deputy sheriffs.
Yeah, look, I know that question seems it's pointed. It's a little ambiguous. So I'd have to go with point A and say, it's case by case basis. I'd have to see the actual circumstances or be there and on view them and make a determination, kind of like on the fly, whether or not I'm going to use force to put somebody on a gurney who's being placed on a 5150 hold. So it's just, we can in some circumstances, but we have to look at like how much force we want to use to get them to do something they don't want to do versus why we're making them do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, she said that the excuse usually is that they don't want to initiate a hostile response.
Well, again, it's gonna have to be circumstance dependent. So I'd have to know exactly.
You got somebody who's like high on meth, and that's a common thing, right?
Okay, if they're high on meth and they need, yes, if they're high on meth, they're under the influence. It's a penal code or it's a H&S code violation. Yeah. We could use force to effect an arrest.
Okay, I see. But you'd have to arrest them, right?
Well, if we're going to use force, then there is no using force to effect an arrest if there's no arrest. Yeah.
Okay. So in other words, if they haven't committed a crime, you can't put them on the gurney.
They did commit a crime. They're high on methamphetamines, right?
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Neighborhoods are taking some control over their neighborhoods with flock cameras. Well, both.
Yes.
And so tell us a little bit about how you are using the data from these flock cameras to track the burglaries in the residential neighborhoods.
I mean, I guess I can give you a hypothetical how we might. So say one of those 4 burglaries that Charles sent my way, there was a good vehicle description, but just no license plate. And we have a good time frame because the video image is timestamped, right? So it's unique. We have the make and model approximately, but Flock is so awesome that, you know, what if there's like a bumper sticker on the driver's side of the bumper? We can enter that in there as a detail in the Flock, and then ask for any matching or similar vehicles in a specific time frame. It'll search the database and it'll give us some returns, and it's license plate reading technology. So we'll get the license plate that way. Since we got some time, I wanted to tell this story because it's such an awesome pinch, and it's used to story. It's a good Flock example. It's not burglary related. It's not Almaden Valley related, but it's Southern Division related. So I think it was like August, September-ish. It was a Saturday afternoon. It was like 2:00 in the afternoon. Beautiful sunny day. This young mom who just given birth 9 weeks earlier, brand new mom, brand new dad inside. Baby's, you know, sitting there. Mom hadn't been out much. Hey, honey, I want to go out. I'm stretching my legs. I was getting cabin fever in here. Can you watch the baby? I'm finally ready. Yes, go ahead. Okay, cool. I'm going to go shopping. She goes to Target over in Oak Ridge. Then she goes to Whole Foods, does some shopping. She goes home and she's unloading her groceries from the back of her SUV, 2:00 in the afternoon. On the surveillance footage from across the street, cop lives there. So we had it pretty quick. You got the bad guy. Here's the victim's house, driveway, vehicle, his car, brand new BMW, like M4, something like that. And he's sitting up against it, looking around, looking at her, looking around, looking at her. As soon as she starts to make the trip from the back of her car up the driveway, he beelines it for her, grabs her, throws her down, and starts attempting to sexually assault her. She starts yelling and screaming. And at this point, what I'm going to tell you is coming from her husband, because I went and checked on them afterwards, and he told me this. I heard her screaming, but there's 2 little girls that live next door, and she's always messing around and playing with him. So I figured she was just goofing around with the kids next door. But then I heard her scream my name, and that just registered. I put the baby down, I ran outside, and there's this guy on top of my wife on the walkway up to my house, and I didn't know how far he had gotten with her. Let that sink in. I hate saying that, but I hated more hearing it because I'm a girl dad and obviously a husband. So he starts yelling, bad guy, he looks up, takes off, gets to his car, leaves. Great suspect description, great vehicle description, but no license plate. We have Flock. So the officers get there, they get the vehicle description, get the video footage from the neighbor, and they access Flock. I need a 2024 to 2025 green M4, you know, in this area. Boom, spits out a picture. It was captured on Flock like 2 hours prior, got a license plate. Well, we also have our real-time intelligence center that's full of a bunch of analysts that work up there. Call it Arctic. Here's a plate. I need to ID somebody who drives that plate. Oh, yep. We ID the person, 60 years old. Nah, somebody's like 20-something years old. Okay, look at the address, work the address up, find me somebody who's around that age. Boom, we have his son. Send me a picture. That looks like the description. So the sergeant, who's the same sergeant that busted that one case wide open with the Los Alamitos Trail, he's awesome, Nick Bird. So he looks where the bad guy lives 4-minute drive from the victim's house, sends his guys over there, jokes off the neighborhood on some surveillance points. If you see this guy or that vehicle, burn a stop on it. Well, the guy had already gotten home, put the car in the garage and shut the garage door, but he was walking around the neighborhood. What do you think he was doing walking around the neighborhood? Looking for another victim. So the officers see him. Wait a minute, that's who we're looking for. They jump out, put the gravis on him, take him into custody. Victim, 2 witnesses, positive ID, positive ID, positive ID. He's bought and paid for. He got booked. And this all happened within about 90 minutes of the crime occurring. We probably would have solved that crime anyways, but not inside of 90 minutes without that Flock camera system. That thing gave us that guy's plate, which gave us a good enough lead to get all that other information, put officers in his neighborhood and catch him walking the neighborhood looking for another victim. So that's how we use Flock to catch bad people.
I would like to hear from
Yeah.
the county folks as to how you integrate the flock data into your investigations.
Yeah, no, thanks. No, it's an investigative tool. That's what we use it for. So if we have similar information, similar circumstances, we have access to that information utilizing their flock system because they share the information.
If the property is in unincorporated, the San Jose Police might have access to it, but it's really the sheriff who has.
Just to follow up and give credit both the police and the sheriff, on this side of Almaden Expressway in 23, privately held block cameras were used. Sheriff showed up on one. It was a stolen vehicle up on a dead end road, and the police also on the side. So there have been 2 cases where block cameras, private homeowners have had them, and both the police and the sheriff responded. That was 23, which compelled us at Country Club to get a block camera.
So much. Thank you. Thanks. Okay, so we've talked about law enforcement. We've heard a lot of interesting stories. We're now going to move into the judicial side of things. We are honored to have one of the most distinguished lawyers in Santa Clara County. He's the founding partner of McManis Faulkner, a premier San Jose law firm. He's been recognized in the best lawyers in America for 30 consecutive years across multiple practice areas. He's a fellow of the International Academy of Trial Lawyers, and he's been selected to the super lawyers from 2004 to 2025. His impact includes a couple of remarkable cases. He secured a landmark California Supreme Court ruling on public records disclosure that set up precedent for the state, and he obtained the first ever court order requiring the federal executive branch to remove someone who had wrongly been placed on a post 9/11 terrorist watch list. That case took 8 years, but ultimately cleared his client's name. More recently, he has represented the families of murder victims as they challenged the Santa Clara County District Attorney's efforts to remove convicted murderers from death row and in the process give them the possibility of a parole. These cases are raising important questions about the constitutional rights of victims and their families, the limits of discretionary sentencing powers of the district attorney, and the ability of a DA to retroactively overturn the findings of a jury. Please join me in welcoming James McManis.
Well, good evening. I like to think that I'm also in the law enforcement business. I'm just enforcing a law from a little different perspective than my colleagues over here. A little bit more about my background. I went to Stanford and majored in history, which meant I was unemployable when I graduated. And so I got a law degree up at the University of California. And then I came down here in 1967 when this was not known as Silicon Valley. It was the Valley of the Heart's Delight. And San Jose was a lovely rural community. I thought this is a good place for me to get started. I knew I would never want to work for anybody, but I got a job in the district attorney's office and I prosecuted criminal cases for 3 years. Then I left to start my own practice, and that's been around now for 50 plus years. And we do nothing but trial work. We don't write wills or contracts. We just try cases. The recent cases about the death penalty are pretty troubling in my mind. How many people here favor the death penalty? Let's have a show of hands. Okay, come on, don't be shy. All right. How many people are opposed to the death penalty? Okay, that's interesting. Personally, I'm undecided. The Holy Father talks about the sanctity of human life. as opposed to abortion, opposed to the death penalty. I really, that's very disrespectful responsive court on my part. On the other hand, when I've seen some of the reports of the homicides that have occurred, it's pretty hard to, say we shouldn't give this guy a death penalty. The district attorney in this county, Jeff Rosen, I think we all know, aspires to higher office. He wanted to be attorney general. He likes to tell people he finished in second place, whatever that means. And about a year ago, he started going around and asking the court, our local court, to reduce death sentences to life without parole. Okay. And his argument basically was, look, these people are never going to get on parole. We have a moratorium on the death penalty. This is a good thing. And this is considered to be very progressive. And what's wrong with that? Well, what's wrong with it is the law doesn't permit that kind of reduction in sentence. It just doesn't. And you might say, well, then how is he able to do that? Well, he was going before the court with a petition to recall a death sentence person and then have his sentence reduced to life without parole. That person's lawyer had no problem with that. It was his duty to his client. And so there was not what we call an adversarial proceeding. The common law, of which we've been blessed with for centuries, calls for one side to take a position, the other side to take an opposite position, adversaries, and then the judge will make a decision. So what was happening here in Santa Clara County was the DA was going in and saying, I want to reduce this guy's sentence to life without parole. There was no adversary position. The guy's lawyer says, yeah, that's fine. And what happened was our local court started reducing these sentences, okay? Whether you agree or disagree with the death penalty, the point here I'm here to make is it was against the law, all right? And so if you're going to enforce the law, you have to enforce the law. This happened, this travesty happened for about 8 or 9 cases. And then Dolores Carr, who many of you know was our former district attorney, called me, explained what was going on, and said there's one more case that's about to be a candidate for a reduction in sentence. And that was a case of Mr. Farley. How many people remember the ESL mass shooting in 1988? Okay. Farley worked there. He was unhappy with one of the women who didn't want to date him. So one day he went into ESL. He ended up shooting and killing 7 people, wounding many others. And this is a guy that Mr. Rosen wanted to have his death sentence reduced to life without parole. Now, there's a statute in California called the Victims' Bill of Rights. And people who are survivors of these terrible shootings, sister, brother, parents, what have you, have a right to be notified by the prosecutor before any sentencing decision is made. Mr. Rosen was kind of going through the formality of doing this in the sense that they'd contact a few people and what have you. And in the Farley case, he had told the court that he had contacted everybody he knew how to contact, and it was about 3 people, all right? And the judge didn't seem like there was much opposition. And then after Dolores asked me to get involved, first of all, we went down and I had to struggle to get the case continued so I could do some due diligence on this. And then we ended up finding 29 people who should have been contacted and weren't contacted and wanted to be heard, people whose husbands had been killed, wives, what have you. And Judge Williams, Ben Williams, spent a whole day hearing victim testimony, which we presented. And at the end of the day, he denied the district attorney's motion. And so Mr. Farley is now sitting in a prison, technically awaiting a death sentence. Although, as you probably know, there's a moratorium on the death penalty right now. So in a sense, what's the point? The point is the law is the law. And whatever you may think about death or against, it's the law. Now, there's a footnote to all of this. One of the cases last year that Mr. Rosen went in to get reduced from death to life without parole was an individual named Eric Chapman. Chapman was a meth addict, a very bad guy, and always in the need of money. And his wife worked in a photo shop, one of these little places in the parking lot, the shopping center, where you can process photos. I don't even know if they did anymore, but in this particular case, his wife calls in and says she's sick or something. And so this leaves the shop, photo shop operation with one young woman. Mr. Chapman, knowing there'd be nobody else there, goes down and stabs her 51 times. And she was begging him to stop. And he told a friend after he got I don't know, $50, $60, and they went up to East Palo Alto and bought some meth, and that's where they were arrested. And he told his companion, well, why'd you stab her 51 times? He said, it just really felt good. Okay. So this was one of these cases where Rosen wanted to reduce it from death to life without parole. The brother and sister of this young woman, Miss LeBou, they went in to see Rosen and told him they just didn't think this was right. And Rosen said, hey, what's the problem? He's going to be behind bars, life without parole. You should just relax. Okay, fast forward a year later, Mr. Rosen now wants to give this guy a straight life, which will make him eligible for parole and put him out on the street within a matter of a year, okay? And they were beside themselves, and they came to see me. So we had another hearing just before the holidays. And fortunately, Judge, what's the name of that judge? Yeah, Eric Gaffon denied that motion. But it was just appalling to me personally that Rosen would tell these people, hey, what's wrong with life without parole? He's never going to get paroled. And then a year later, he's working on another deal to get him out and basically would allow him to get out on parole. So, you know, that's just what's going on. I could tell you a lot of stories about Mr. Rosen. I think in the interest of full disclosure, I should let you know I'm suing him on another case. He had a deputy named, what was his name? Daniel Chung. Daniel ran for district attorney recently, lost to Rosen. And Daniel wrote an op-ed piece in the Mercury News in which he said, Rosen was promoting this restorative justice to try and, restore and rehabilitate people, which is fine. But Daniel's op-ed piece said, we should not forget the elderly Asian person who gets mugged on the street and robbed. He's got some rights too. Well, when Rosen read that in the paper, he was just irate because he saw this as frustrating his political ambitions. And so he immediately took Mr. Chung, who was a graduate of Harvard College, Columbia Law School. He got a distinguished award for his prosecution. He was on the felony team down here in the DA's office. And he sent an email, Rosen, to his chief assistant saying, I want this guy transferred to mental health or some other very low-end assignment. So that's what happened. And Mr. Chung came to see me, and I agreed to represent him. We filed a civil rights action that he'd been punished for exercise of his First Amendment rights. That was fought tooth and nail. I'm sorry to say that the judge in the district court in San Francisco granted Rosen's motion to dismiss the case. We took that up to the Ninth Circuit on appeal, and that was reversed. Then he cooked up another motion to dismiss, and the judge was really obviously a little unhappy with the Ninth Circuit, granted the second motion, and made a comment, let's see what the Ninth Circuit does with that. So you'll find out soon enough because we're going up on appeal again. With respect to that case about the TSA that my friend here mentioned, we fought the government for 14 years on that case. This woman was a postdoctoral student at Stanford. She was going home to Malaysia with her daughter, and at the United Airlines counter in San Francisco, the agent said, just say, I need to check something. Next thing she knows, she's hooked up, handcuffed, and put in custody for a day until some grown-up said, for heaven's sakes, let her out. And they went ahead and she managed to get back to Malaysia. So we filed an action. The government refused to say there was such a thing as TSA. They denied any information on that, if you can believe that. How many people have gone through TSA, okay? Anyway, that was their position. And the judge said, well, I don't think you're entitled to have a hearing in court on this. I'm dismissing the case. So we went up to the Ninth Circuit, reversed. Now we're back down. We're going to get our day in court, except the government cooks up another theory. And this theory is, well, you know, these rights that I guess some people and citizens here have, they only exist if you're here in the United States and she's in Malaysia. Why was she in Malaysia? Because they wouldn't give her a visa to come back to the United States. The judge says, well, you know, that's the government, and dismisses a second time. Up to the Ninth Circuit, reversed. Okay. And so we finally get to trial, and Eric Holder, the Attorney General of the United States at that time, and James Clapper, the Director of National Security, filed affidavits under penalty of perjury, swearing that they had personally examined, not that their assistant had done it or another person, they had personally examined her file, Rahina Ibrahim's file, and they were testifying by affidavit under oath that she was a danger to national security, and that's why she was on a list, okay? The case comes up for trial. We had three or four lawyers from our office. The government had 20 on the other side. And FBI agent apparently didn't get the party line because he said, she got on a list because I checked the wrong box. It was a big mistake. Yeah, how about that? Do you think Mr. Holder got prosecuted for perjury? No. Mr. Clapper? No. So then the judge, to his credit, ruled in our favor, ordered the government to disclose all lists that she was on. Now, if she thought she was on one list for TSA, she was on 14 lists that the government keeps on all of us, all right? And so she got her name removed. By the way, when it came time for her trial, she couldn't come to the United States for her trial because they wouldn't give her a visa. Remember, her daughter was with her when she got detained at the airport. Her daughter had grown up and was an American citizen and a lawyer and wanted to come to the United States for her mother's trial. And when she showed up in Singapore to take the flight to San Francisco, there was a note from the State Department of the United States saying, do not allow this person to board the plane. We couldn't present the client's testimony because we couldn't, she was not allowed to come to testify personally at trial. So we had to take her deposition in London, and there was a big kerfuffle over there. They wanted us to take it at the embassy, said, no, we're not taking it at the embassy. We're taking it at a law office here. A barrister was kind enough to give us space. Anyway, long story short, we won the case, and then we want to put in a bill for our fees. The judge was still a little unhappy with us because we got him reversed a couple times, and he gave us a fee, but he cut it way down. So we then took this is appeal number 3 of the Ninth Circuit. We won that appeal, but the Ninth Circuit judge was kind enough to say, you know, maybe the fee should be even less. We didn't like that, so we asked for what's called an en banc review of 11 judges of the Ninth Circuit, and that's where the case came to it. Well, not quite. Came to what made a lot of progress. We got our full fee, and got some real nice things about how this little law firm in San Jose took a case no one else would take, and they were outnumbered, and blah 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 blah. Okay, so the government files a petition for a writ of certiorari, the United States Supreme Court, complaining about our fee award. All right. The United States Supreme Court denied the petition with one justice dissenting. Anyone want to guess who dissented and thought we should have gotten screwed on our fee? I'll tell you, it was Samuel Alito. Okay. So I don't know. I've just been kind of rambling away here. I'm going to shut up now, and I'll be happy to entertain any questions. Yes, young lady. That's you, young lady, right there.
I was just wondering, how do you get paid on these cases that you're taking, like representing people a long time ago?
I'll bet the answer to that. Have you heard the term pro bono?
Yeah.
Pro bono is Latin. It means for free. Okay. And what happened in my checkered career was after I left the DA's office, I first of all was defending a lot of cases, and I'm be happy to answer the question if someone asks it at some point this evening. How do you represent someone you know is guilty? Okay. Well, I'll answer it right now. I've had a lot of practice. Okay. And plus the fact the criminal justice system is not designed to determine whether someone is or is not guilty. The whole system has the district attorney been able to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And if he has proven on a reasonable doubt, person should be convicted. If he hasn't, if he's fallen short, he's entitled to an acquittal. And that's all the defense attorney does in these cases, is test the proof, test the charges, make sure every right is observed. But getting back to your question about how we get paid, I first of all was doing defense work after I left the DA's office. I was getting paid by the county for defending these cases. Then other lawyers started asking me to try their civil cases, which I did. And then we ended up doing a lot of work with some pretty significant clients, Apple, Intel, various corporations. And we still do a lot of work for them. But as I grew older, I'm 86, but still in the mix. As I grew older, I found I was more interested in doing these cases for free. Okay. I'll tell you another case I had. Young man, black man. He married a white woman in London. He was a Marine, United States Marine Corps. And he was on the honor guard at the London embassy. And he fell in love with a British woman. He married, came to the U.S. And he worked in the city of San Jose as a code enforcement guy. She had another job at the city. She was taking a night class at the San Jose State. And so the night in question, she was in class. He'd taken the family RV over to Columbus Park, fixed the kids dinner, was reading him a story when some San Jose cops show up and order him out of the RV, spin him around, push him up against the side of the vehicle, pat him down, and then tell him that they're keeping an eye on him or something like that. Well, he was quite indignant. This is a guy who had served his country in the United States Marine Corps. He worked for the city. And so he said, I'm going to report this to your supervisor. Well, guess what? They go back and decide to write up the report as we suspected he was molesting these children. no basis for that. So anyway, we ended up going to trial on that. And I'm happy to say the jury returned a nice verdict in his behalf. And then I applied for attorney's fees. And you have to submit all kinds of records and show what your background is and this and that. I think the verdict in that case was $100,000 for the young man, and the our actual fees were $650,000, and the judge cut it to $450,000. And I said, Judge, what are you doing? $450,000. I'm not even covering my overhead. I've got people I got to pay and so forth and so on. Oh, Jim, that's the biggest fee I ever awarded. Well, you really need to look at this, okay? Anyway, that's the way it works. But now, in my dotage, as they say, I just do what I feel like, because I got a lot of great lawyers like this young woman sitting right here. She's here to be sure I have adult supervision, and I'll give you a case right now. This is a case of a woman who had a dog, and she really loved this dog. The dog's name was Federico. In Federico, her apartment where she lived, she couldn't have a dog. So she takes the dog and gives it to what she thought was a friend to look after until she could get an apartment where she could have a dog. And so she visited Federico every day, and she paid for his food, and she paid for vet bills and this and that. Finally, when she got an apartment, she said, no, it's time for I want to have Federico back. Well, not so fast. I kind of like Federico. I consider him my dog now. And so she came to see me. All right. And I said, yeah, that sounds like a very interesting case. So we are filing an action this week to recover Federico. Okay. And the motto that we've attached to this case is free Federico and all political prisoners. Okay. And I don't know if we'll get any money out of that. When I get these cases that come into the office, I have to be very careful. And I have to explain to any lawyer that's working with me, such as Miriam, I said, now, don't mention this case to the managing partner because she won't approve, okay? But that's the way it is. We do these because we love this country. We love the work. We love the law. And I started this little talk by saying I consider myself part of law enforcement because I believe in enforcing the law. And I believe that without an adversary system, that's what happened in those death penalty cases. The DA was coming in with this crazy thing about reducing it to life without parole. The defense attorney didn't, have anything to say. He was with it too. And the judges basically got misled into doing something that was against the law. And it wasn't until I got involved in one case where the law was enforced. And that's the way it is. Okay. Here we go.
I want to say two things. One, how do you propose to fix the system? And number two is I read a lot in the newspaper that when let's say Democrats come in, they appoint a lot of lawyers. And then when Republicans come in, they appoint a lot of lawyers. And there's concern that the judges are all being appointed by political things as opposed to what may be perhaps legal things. So just curious.
Well, in California, you get to be a judge either by the governor appointing you, as you have said, or you can run for election, and then people can vote for you. Okay, and then every 6 years, if you're a judge, you have to stand for election, and it rarely is a sitting judge opposed. You have to be pretty bad to be opposed, but that's the way it works. Now, in other states, they have commissions that will recommend people on merit, and then the governor picks one of the top three or something of that sort. But in California, you either get appointed or you get elected. And unlike the state system where you got to stand for election every 6 years, in the federal system, you're appointed for life on good behavior, which means you're appointed for life. Okay. All federal judges are appointed for life. Yeah. Yeah. The way that works is the president nominates someone for the district court, federal court, and then the Judiciary Committee has to consider that person's qualifications and then vote, and then they have to be confirmed by the Senate. You may recall when Justice Kavanaugh was up, there was a very contentious hearing because there was a report that he'd sexually assaulted some girl in high school or something. So that's the way that works. Yeah. Okay. Yes, you get a second question.
I was just wondering, thanks for taking my question. When we finally collectively get tired of all these activist judges that keep letting people go when they should be convicted, do we have any recourse there?
Well, you do in California. You could put up a candidate to run against that judge when that judge ran for re-election. Okay. Yeah, that's a very interesting question. Activist judges. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Yes, sir.
So when judges run for re-election or getting put, is it permissible or can the public be made aware of how many times they've been reversed?
The answer to that question is yes. You have to dig it for that information, but there is information about that. But it's like most elections, you've got to get organized, you've got to get out, get support, get votes, get money for advertising and this and that. And
but it's something that an opponent, if someone was running against them, they
absolutely.
Put that out
if
there.
the opponent wanted to do that, that's absolutely right. Yeah. I'm always grumbling about judges for some reason. And my wife says, well, if you don't like judges, why don't you run for judge? I said, I don't think so. Anyway.
Okay.
All right, wait a minute. The former district attorney. Okay, wait, this guy, you get this next question? All right, you get the question, you can get one. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you so much. You have represented the media in cases concerning the California Public Records Act.
Yep.
Anything that you'd like to share regarding transparency among public agencies?
Well, I'll tell you this. This particular case that went to the California Supreme Court was a case where the San Jose City Council granted, loaned, I don't know what the term was, $1 million to Tom McHenry for his market thing down there, whatever it is. Yeah. Yeah, San Pedro Square. So we had a client, public spirited person, that wanted to see what the information was behind that loan, grant, or whatever. The city produced some meaningless memoranda, but we said we want to see the emails because that's the way people communicate these days. No emails, you know. And so we went to court. The trial judge here in Santa Clara County told the city, that's ridiculous, produce the emails. You win, hooray for us. They then went to the Court of Appeal, which is the intermediate appellate court, and they said, the Court of Appeal said, no. If these emails are on private devices, personal devices, the city doesn't have to produce those because it's a problem of her management or something. So we then went to the California Supreme Court, and it was really, and the court granted a hearing, it's discretionary, and I got to argue in the court. I remember afterwards we were sitting around having a cup of coffee and we were trying to figure out whether we'd win or not. And if we did win, by how many votes? There's 7 votes. I said, oh, I think we're going to get a 5-2 decision out of this. A couple of nasty questions during the oral argument. Well, we won 7-0. Okay. And that was a landmark case. And, but there's a practice called Friends of the Court, amicus curiae, and they can file briefs on each side of a question. And I thought it was very telling who was involved in that. On the side wanting transparency and get the emails and open books and this and that were Peace Officers Associations, unions, ACLU, media, all of the people that want to see stuff, and oppose the people filing Friends of the Court brief on the other side, school districts, city councils, counties, all the government that doesn't want to have that kind of transparency. Okay. Well, anyway, we won, but I got to tell you something, and I'm speaking about the county of Santa Clara, the city of San Jose. They don't like that at all. And so when we file a request under the Public Records Act, oh, we get all kinds of objections, and we have to fight like hell to get what we're supposed to get because of that. Okay. How many people have heard of the Little Saigon case? There's a guy, he's a well-informed citizen. As you know, San Jose has the biggest Vietnamese population in any city in America. If you're talking counties, Orange County's got a bigger population than Santa Clara County, but in San Jose, we have the biggest population of anybody, of Vietnamese refugees. The community wanted to name their district Little Saigon. Okay. Well, Madison Nguyen, who was the only Vietnamese person on the council, she had a supporter named Lap Tang. And Lap Tang had a big shopping center down on a Story Road called Vietnam Town. So he thought it would be great to name the district Vietnam Town. Okay. And so Madison, to her discredit, was going to, try to honor that. And there's a very odious practice in the San Jose City Council where if a particular council person for a particular district wants something, the rest of these guys pretty much rubber stamp it. There are exceptions, but that's the way it goes. So Madison wanted it named Lap Tang, and she, everybody went along with that. Okay. Well, that would have been the end of it, except that there's a guy named Forrest Williams who was on the council. Now, Forrest wasn't the brightest bulb in the lamp. And what happened was that he runs into Madison outside of an elevator one day, and he says, Madison, I don't know anything about this Saigon Vietnamese thing. I don't want to know anything about it, but you've got my vote. Okay. All right. Well, because she lined up 4 other people and filed a 5-person memo with his vote in her pocket, that was 6. That's a violation of the Brown Act. Okay. We never would have discovered this, except Forrest made the mistake of going on Vietnamese television and giving an interview in which he told all this story. Okay. So suddenly we've got a real case. Okay. So we ended up trying that case. And it was one of my I really enjoy all my cases, but that was a good case because on our side of the courtroom, it was packed with Vietnamese refugees. I mean, there wasn't an empty seat. On the other side of the courtroom, there are a couple of drunks from St. James Park that wandered in, taking a nap, what have you, okay? And I'll never forget when Madison was testifying the stand, she told this story about her people were boat people. They'd come to the U.S., okay? And I said, that's a very compelling story, Miss Nguyen. You see all these people behind me? How many of those people do you think could tell the same story? He says, well, I don't know. I said, well, let's find out. And I turned around and said, anybody who had that same experience, would you stand up? They all rose up. And the other thing I liked about that was I used to do a little press conference on the steps of the historic courthouse, and they'd ask me the questions in English. I would answer them in English, and then there'd be a Vietnamese interpreter and da-da-da-da. So one morning during the trial, this guy comes up to me and says, Mr. McManis, you were on TV in Paris last night. I said, in Paris? Paris, Texas? No, Paris, France. And apparently there's a big population of Vietnamese in Paris, okay? So bottom line was that the result of that trial, we got a permanent injunction against the city of San Jose requiring that any member of the council and staff has to put a certification at the bottom of one of these 5-person memos saying that they hadn't committed any violation of the Brown Act, okay? I'm going to tell you one other favorite story, and then I'm going to turn it back to Madam here, but this is the famous elephant case. I represented Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus when it was still a circus, and they would come to San Jose every fall, and they'd have set up at the arena, and they'd have the deal here, okay? Well, the animal rights people hated this. They just didn't like this. Elephants in a circus, that's terrible, blah, blah, blah. So one day, I was down at the office working. It was a Saturday in August, I'll never forget it. And my lawyer calls me and says, Jim, you better get down here. We got a problem. I said, okay, I'm on my way. So I get down there and I said, what's the problem? Well, the Humane Society is claiming that Mark Gable, who was the son of Gunter Gable Williams, the legendary trainer, stabbed Asia the elephant with an ankus. Now, an ankus is an old Indian device guide the elephant. You don't want to use it like that. So I said, well, let me just go look at the elephant. So I go over and look at Asia. I couldn't see anything wrong with her. So I went over and I talked to the Humane Society person. I said, I don't see anything wrong with this elephant. Can you come over and take a look at it? No, I'm not coming over to look at your elephant. Well, okay. Why don't you get a vet of your choice, come down and examine the elephant? I'm not doing that either. I said, okay. So case is set for trial. The Humane Society, they'll distribute a bunch of postcards to all of their subscribers to fill out and send to the DA. Prosecute this terrible crime. There's actually a section of the penal code, believe it or not, somewhat obscure, called elephant abuse, misdemeanor. So we go to trial. I had a very difficult judge. She'd just recently been in the DA's office, and she made sure that if the DA forgot to make an objection or an argument, that she'd make it for her. And so it was just, fighting tooth and nail. And I had a young lawyer who had done a little discovery. You don't get much discovery in criminal cases, but she'd managed to get some records on this police officer who was behind the prosecution. And so the police officer testifies. And on cross-examination, I said, now, I've got some records here. I'd like you to take a look at them, be sure they're the real deal. Yeah, those are my records. And I see here that you went to a convention in Washington, D.C., and I'd like to, you recall that? Oh, yes. And you attended some classes and courses? Oh, yes, I did. And I'd like to go through some of these titles. How to Shut Down the Circus. Was that one of the courses you attended? I think so. Testifying Against the Circus. Is that another one? Yes. Yeah. And weren't you up in Oakland when we were up there a couple of weeks before this all happened? You were there picketing? Yes. Okay, that's fine. Then they put on the Humane Society officer. I said, you remember I was out there that afternoon? Yes. And I asked you to take a look at the elephant? Yes. And you refused. That's true. And I suggested that you get your own vet and examine. Is that right? That's right. And you refused. That's correct. And then I sat down. Okay. And then the DA asked the question I was afraid to ask. And the DA says, well, why didn't you get your own vet? I didn't think it would help my case. And the other thing I got to tell you about that story, the DA brings in the world's greatest expert on elephants from some retirement home for elephants in Tennessee. And she's got big Angus, ugliest thing I've seen, but massive thing. And even the DA on the bench, who was the judge, thought, no, get into that. So, you know, when you get a case, in the criminal case, you get very little discovery. You don't get take depositions or this or that. So she comes in, she testifies, and he took the evening recess, and I called a friend of mine. I said, Alan, I've got to cross-examine this world's greatest expert on elephants, and I don't know what to do. I don't even know where to have any reports. It's Alan says, Jim, that's the way he talks. Jim, there's one thing you must not do. Don't ask her any questions about elephants. So I said, okay. So the next day I said, all right, madam, you've flown out here from Tennessee. Yes. And I said, I assume the district attorney paid for your air flight. Yes. And the return ticket. Yes. Someone from the DA's office picked you up at the airport. Yes. Drove you to your luxury suite at the hotel. Yes. And they're paying for your hotel. Yes. And you have spoken to the district attorney. Yes. You've spoken to the investigator. Would you agree with me that fairness is an important aspect of our judicial system? Well, of course. So you talked to the district attorney and you took all these benefits from the DA. Why is it that you refuse to talk to my investigator? And she says, well, I don't know. It's fine. That's all I had. So anyway, that was a verdict that came in on December 21, sort of state of the year. And I told the press afterwards, got the shortest verdict and the shortest day. Can't get any better than that. And the Humane Society person said, the jury just didn't get it. And I said, no, they got it. You people didn't get it. Okay. All right, Dolores, what's your question?
Actually, I don't have a question, but I wanted to just make a comment on Jim's comments with regard to the death penalty reductions, because somebody asked about how the community can be involved. And part of the struggle is that our newspaper just doesn't cover stuff anymore like they used to. All of these trials and all of these things that are going on, they're matters of public record. I actually found out about the death row reductions from reading the newspaper, and it just struck me as really odd. But at the end of the day, 11 murderers, torture, kidnap, lying in wait, the most heinous murderers got their sentences reduced. And the only thing that stopped the last one was Jim getting involved. He got involved for free. Pro bono, represented all of the victims that we found. There were 40 statements that we presented, but I will tell you from my own personal opinion, from having attended many of those, I started just attending those hearings and watching what was going on. And it was very clear that there was an agreement between both sides. Nobody was going to object except the victims' families. And it didn't matter what the victims' family said, the DA was going to do what the DA was going to do until Jim got involved. And when we had that last hearing in December of 2024 on Farley, we had Sunnyvale police officers in court in uniform, sitting in the jury box. We had 40 people on Zoom. We had a packed audience. I got TV cameras covering the story because they knew it was important. And I believe facing all of that public pressure, because in my estimation, based on my legal experience and analysis, there was nothing different about Farley than any of the other death sentences. But we won that one because we had a lawyer representing victims, and those victims got a chance to be heard in a way that they never would have had they just been left on their own. So
all those people in the Farley case got some justice, and the Rosalina's brother and sister on the Chapman case, we live to fight another day. Because if that motion had been, that stipulation, the agreement between the defense and the prosecution had been accepted by the court, the sentence would have gone in 1 year from death to life without parole to 25 to life. And because he's been in for 30 years and he was under 25 when he committed this heinous murder, he would have been eligible for parole, all within 2 years, all at the behest of the DA, over the objections of the family members. And that is not justice in Santa Clara County, in my opinion. So we have to pay attention. It's very hard. But if you're a victim, you know, you do have rights. And sometimes we get lucky and we get somebody like of Jim's caliber in to really save the day. So I can't say enough about what he did to save justice for people in Santa Clara County.
Well, that's very nice. And before we take another question, Miriam, stand up and take a bow here. Come on, up, 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 up. This is my colleague, Miriam Peters. She just started her career as a lawyer. She went to Hastings. It's now called UC Law San Francisco. And she did all the work. I got to go in and, you know, do my thing, but Miriam really made that case. And one of the reasons I'm 86 and still doing this is that people like this, I just love to be with young lawyers who are idealistic, work hard. We went up to campus to interview people that we thought we might want to hire. And Miriam was one of those persons we interviewed. And it came out that she had worked in the fields down in Santa Maria picking strawberries. And I said, well, why'd you do that? She said, because they told me I couldn't. And that's the kind of person I really like, because, you know, we don't take no for an answer. Okay, who's got another question here?
I did have a question. I'm a little bit confused. Of all of those cases where it went from death row to life without parole, were any of those individuals then later released on an early release?
Not yet.
And the reason I ask the question is because personally I went from a death row advocate to life without parole. I mean, it has to be a real heinous crime for me to accept the fact that someone's life should be taken away from them. But life without parole to me means life without parole. But it hasn't happened
No,
yet.
it hasn't, but the Chapman case, that's the case I mentioned,
right,
where the DA told the family, the sister, brother and sister of the woman that was stabbed 51 times, hey, life without parole. He's never going to get paroled. And a year later, now the DA's in there asking to have the sentence reduced further. Okay. And fortunately, the judge said, no, you haven't made a showing for that. But we haven't heard the last of that because Mr. Rosen's a very persistent fellow, and I suspect we'll be back in court this year sometime. Yeah, it's a rough deal. Okay. I want to hear some more stories. I could be here all night. I'm a night owl. Go ahead.
Thank you for a lot of examples and all. I know this is not a relevant question to this area, but I recently visited New York, and your elephant example reminded me of that because we saw Central Park, we saw the horse carriages, and my girls and I personally seen there were some horses limping, and I followed the news that some of the owners of the horse carriages are saying no to the city appointed vet to examine their horses. And then we don't know what is going to happen. The riders law, all those other things I've read about. What is your thoughts on, because what we see is we see and we read the news, but we don't know some of those things you enlightened us. What are your thoughts on the Central Park horse carriages? Do we have to stick to tradition here? Do we have to think of animal perspective here? Thank you.
Well, I think all of us care about animals. That's why I've taken the case of Federico, free Federico and all political prisoners. And I think horses, can be abused. We've seen that. In fact, they say that what caused the invention of the cable car in San Francisco was some poor horse that fell down and slid down with the carriage on top of him. So it's a difficult, that's the other thing I think we should all appreciate. Someone once said, the color of truth is gray. It's not black. It's not white. It's somewhere in there. And when I'm selecting a jury, I like to get people who are critical thinkers, who aren't just going to, because someone says it's so, it must be so. They're going to say, well, what, tell me, what's the reason for that? Alice in Wonderland, Alice said to the Queen, just because you say it so, it doesn't make it so. And the Queen says it does if you say it 3 times. And sometimes I think that's what happens in our society. All right, I got it. I have my closing story here, but I want to, if anybody got any other questions, okay, what do you want to know? AI, I hate it.
I mean, a lot of briefs are written by AI.
Yeah.
I presume, I know in the patent law area, it's invasive. Decisions are being made by AI.
AI is the latest fad, if you will. Okay. And I'm a high-tech guy myself. You probably have already figured that out. I keep a device here. Right here in my pocket. Okay.
That's called a Palm Zero.
Yeah, Palm Zero. That's right. That's good. Palm Zero. Okay. And some of the problems with these AI cases is lawyers have submitted these beautiful briefs, and then the opposing attorney and the judge start looking up these cases, and they don't exist. And it's a big problem. It could be a big benefit for people. It could not be such a big benefit. I don't know what the answer is. And I really, I'm a history major. I don't know about stuff like that. Okay. All right. Now we heard from our friends on the police about the burglaries. How many people here have experienced a burglary? Okay. Well, a lot of lucky people. Okay. So this guy was in trial on a burglary case by Judge Allen, and it's a charge of burglary. The guy was on trial for burglary, and the judge asked the jurors, how many people have had a burglary? And everybody's hand went up. Okay. So DA asks questions, and then it's time for the defendant's attorney to ask questions. So the defendant says to juror number 1, now, madam, or sir, I should say, juror number 1, I saw that you were one of the people that raised your hand when Judge Allen asked for who'd been a victim of burglary. Yes. And I take it that you have been the victim of a burglary. Yes. Now you understand the charge here is burglary. Yes. My client's accused of burglary. Yes. You don't think that my client had anything to do with your burglary, do you? The guy said, that thought did cross my mind. All right, well, listen, thank you very much. I hope I answered some questions. This is a great group. I did a little head count while I was listening to the officers. I think at one point you had about 50 people here. This is the kind of participation that I think is important. Okay. And I had a client, I'll just shut up here. I had a client come in here, and he's been jacked around by the city. He was a fellow from India, and very difficult case, very challenging. And I said, do you really want to spend money on this? This is a tough case. And he got tears in his eyes. He said, Mr. McManis, I came to America because I believe in America. should not happen in America. And I said, yeah, I agree with you. I'll take your case. So that's what it's all about. All right. Thank you. Good night. God bless.
That was terrific. All right. Thanks to Mr. McManis. Thank you all for coming, spending your evening with us. We will be back on February the 9th, and we're looking for people to talk about the costs of converting from natural gas utilities to electricity. And that's being forced on us will be 2027 is when they no longer will be able to sell certain gas appliances here in the state of California. So look forward to seeing you.